Yeah, it's a special request for Lewis. Yeah, I feel like I've been stitched up here because suddenly found out they're filming it and all this stuff. I would have shaved and, well, probably wouldn't. So anyway, yeah, this is a talk I gave, oh, hang on. What's happening? Best laid plans. Hang on one sec. Oh, didn't count on that, did you? Yeah, this is a talk I gave actually a long time ago in Japan, so if it feels fresh and exciting, it's because it's the first time I've seen it in about 8 or 9 months as well. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about feature toggles. Do you remember Lewis complaining a lot about this? Like, why do we need this? Why don't we do this? This is rubbish. Didn't think about that till earlier this morning, so a bit late to change it. But really, yeah, I just wanted to talk a bit about why maybe we have this system, where it came from, and I also have to admit that I worked on the very early version of this a few years back, but a bunch of people in this room know a lot more than me about this now. So yeah, in the very beginning, this is 2015. This is how old Cookpad Global is. We actually started with Vietnam and Spanish and English. I can't remember exactly why we started with those, but anyway, we had a very basic, that should say add a recipe, I believe, and then some recipes, very simple. And then we, got a bit more sophisticated. We had a very basic search. Actually, the UI is really bad, but those words in a line there are actually links. Probably should be underlined. But that kind of exposed a new problem that we had. This is a Spanish version, and then we also had English and Vietnamese, like I said. And in the English version, we had a link that said Japanese recipes, and the reason being because we'd kind of translated a lot of Japanese recipes into English, but we only wanted to show that on the English version and not Spanish version, obviously. So when our engineers in Japan, Piao, found this issue that this Japanese link was hard-coded, and you were saying, we could probably do this, wrap it locale equals yen, and then, otherwise the API is empty, and then blah, blah, blah. So it seemed like a good idea, so I thought, kind of inspired by a talk, I can't see my notes, I've forgotten the guy's name. Yeah, someone from GitHub anyway, talked about their feature toggle system, or feature flag system, and they just said, yeah, they just wrap code in these things and make a conditional. Seemed like a good idea, so make a simple helper method, and then stick this in the code here. Seems to work. We could only show that Japanese link for English users. And at this time that file only had 4 contributors. I think the piece of the bit of code there was just me, I think, so not much impact. Fast forward 6 months, we're rocking and rolling now. Okay, not really rocking, maybe rolling, but we've got about I don't know, 10 or 15 random things, like is the feed enabled, home search enabled, and these are all just, we had this enabled question mark idea, and then they're mostly just around what locale is set. That cookies one is a bit weird. What's that? Yeah, so this is right around, they had a law where you had to put a disclaimer if you're showing cookies, but only in the EU. So we have, it's a good example of how this didn't work very well. We have Spanish language in 20 countries, but we don't need to show this disclaimer in Argentina or something. So we have all this craziness. And then still 6 months later, only 7 contributors. Seems to work. We'd moved, by that time we'd moved it over to a features helper, so trying to clean the, keep things clear. But then 18 months go by, time flies. And then, we really found that this is getting out of control, and we had 20, 30 of these things. It's all over the code. They're all starting to get named differently. We don't know what's going on. So then we kind of just extract this to a simple singleton where we can kind of instantiate this and then create feature toggles kind of on the fly at startup. And we had this idea that we just, name them here, like it says, popular searches. And this duo and owner was just wishful thinking at this time. We thought, let's, because these are usually product experiments and they tend to just stick around forever unless we kind of take people to task and say, why is this still here? Can we remove it? We thought we'll put the date and the owner so we can, don't know why I put my own name in there, that was a mistake. So we can go and bug people and say what's happening with this. Didn't actually do anything with that. Those attributes, just they were there for show in the code. But then we can just have this really simple API wrapping code, feature toggle enabled, search, yes, do this, no, do that. And again, this is only very few lines of code, as you saw, and that's the reason we didn't reach for something like Flipper, or usually it's like, oh, there's already a gem to do that, but we don't add thousands of dependencies and code we don't understand when literally it's 20 lines of code. But now we're rocking. 40 contributors, 41 contributors. So lots of people getting involved. And then at this point, we have so many of these toggles, feature toggles, we notice this kind of different classification where we have experiments that we really want to expire because we don't know. Let's try this different kind of search box or different kind of feature. But then we have this thing called, we noticed we had a lot of things called rollouts, which were really, it's not an experiment. We know we really need this, but it's only really applies to, English market or Spanish market. An example might be search, I think was a good one, where we didn't really expose search till we had more than a couple of thousand recipes, because you don't want to go to a search, let me find peanut butter, cookies, and there's nothing because there's only 10 recipes. So this is a different class of experiment versus rollout. And that cleaned up the code a bit. And then, just showing a bit of code here to add an experiment in our configuration file. We just name it. I think, we enabled all of the experiments at this point. This is stupid idea number one. Enable everything in staging, really confuses people. Helps engineers because you can just quickly test your feature in staging. And then we're checking, okay, this is it Argentina, Spain, or Great Britain, then enable this feature toggle. So that distinction was, I think I just said this, but experiments, short-lived features that we want to kind of prototype. We're testing, might rip it out at some point soon. And then rollouts, features that are not viable in all regions, but not experiments. So we don't really need to keep bugging people, why is this still here? We know we believe in it. This is quick. So 2020, we have about 36 experiments and 28 rollouts. This is changing all the time, so we might add 10 and remove 10 over the space of a month or two or three. Some other features I was trying to, I did add it, something that Carl pointed out to me today, but we've kind of changed how we test features, and I think we used to just enable them all actually when it was originally done. Actually, originally we couldn't enable the features, the feature toggles, so you just couldn't test them. That didn't work. Then you could enable them all, but had all kinds of weird side effects. And the current version, you can enable a feature. So basically, you're saying this feature is always on, no matter what the criteria are, and then the rest of your spec will assume that it's true. And then there's another one which I forget the name of, but it will. It will evaluate the toggle, so it'll actually run the code and say, is this test currently running under Spanish or English or French, and decide whether it's on or off because of that. We've got someone in our team really enjoys this kind of work, and it's a really good thing to remind people this is expiring. So now we have Slack notifications when something's expiring. I think we switched it to squad or team names because it got a bit personal if you're like naming someone all the time in Slack, especially. You can see when I did this talk, it was April. Should have updated that. This I'm not sure about this because I don't think we should have this feature in there, but basically you can override these expirations, and it's probably a good idea because if you're adding a feature and you decide, okay, we're going to expire it on 31st of December, that's cool, and then 31st of December you're out drinking and it's New Year's Eve and the experiment's turned off and the site's down. So that's I don't know. So you can override these things. I'm not sure this is a good idea. And then we wanted to expose this. I'm not sure if this is the latest implementation, but it's also kind of introduces a lot of complexities and just more and more questions, I guess. But we wanted to expose it to the apps. So with an app, you download the app. How do we dynamically show which things are toggled in and out? Do we do it client side? Do we do it server side? This was just one way of doing that. This is another half. I forgot to check as well if we ever did anything with this. I saw an interesting company seems to, now they've kind of productized technical debt. Got to have a look at that. It's quite interesting. I think after every PR, they send a questionnaire, and you have to fill in this questionnaire, and it will kind of give you a rating on technical debt and then report back. It's kind of cool. But this was a similar kind of thing, just to try and keep ourselves honest around trade-offs we made. Like here, I guess we didn't translate anything because this feature toggle was for Indonesia only. No point translating it into 30 languages. But yeah, conclusions. It's a good question because I can't see my notes. But yeah, start simple. It can go a long way. And then consider about how toggles are used. So yeah, experiments and rollouts. They're quite different. I think that got in the way a lot, where we were trying to understand, is this finished? Is it still an experiment? What kind of status is it in? And then yeah, clean out old code as much as you can. Try and get people to take ownership of the feature and the test. Yeah, and that was it. Bit quick, but hopefully that gave you a little insight into how we used to work, at least. And maybe Lewis won't hate it as much, or maybe he feels vindicated. I don't know, but yeah, thanks.